Sounds good. How is everyone today? Welcome to our WIA and Empowered Women, Empowering Women.
love the shirt.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we're so happy to have you here today. You know, one of the things we heard in our early committee meetings was that we really need to advocate for you and empower you and mentor you throughout the year, and that's why we're here. So we've got some great speakers today that we're really excited to hear what they have to share and how they can kind of empower us in the workplace and throughout, you know, our personal life to kind of help us grow and find that clarity. So we have Krista Clark here, and I will introduce them further later as well in a little more detail. So Krista Clark, welcome, and we have Jackie Garcia as well, and Stephanie Hicks. So thank you so much for being our speakers today. I also wanted to say that we have Laura Shin, our president of AIA, on the call. And Laura, if you wanted to say anything, you could hear. We just wanted to thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for putting together such a great program. I'm really excited to hear from all the speakers. And I really want to say I appreciate all the work that the WIA committee has done to put together some really meaningful and substantive programs this year. So great job.
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of it.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so right before we get kicked off, I'm just going to do a quick word to our sponsors. So we have two amazing sponsors for this event that stepped up. The first is actually Haley's company. Is it pronounced Symbiotic, Haley?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I always say Symbiotech in my head.
It's okay. It's the way it's written.
Okay, so Symbiotic Design Lab, Haley started this in 2014. So it's a design and fabrication laboratory. They focus on residential, both ground up and remodel, commercial development, tenant improvements, installations, and more. And hence the name. They believe in forming symbiotic relationships with their clients to make sure that they get the best outcome possible. So thanks, Haley. We really appreciate it. And obviously, women-owned firm. That's amazing. Our other sponsor is the Miller Hall Partnership. They have two studios, one here down in San Diego and their main branch is up in Seattle. They've been around since 1977. They've continued to evolve their projects with broadening sustainability. That's really what they're known for. Both studios are Living Building Title certified. And they've also made some amazing commitments to the NOMA Northwest 2020 Call to Action Pledge, as well as the NOMA SoCal DII Challenge 2020. You can learn more about this and their other initiatives on millerhall.com, and then Symbiotic, I said it again, symbiotic.com if you want to learn more. So that's our sponsors. And then I'm gonna introduce our first speaker, Christa Clark. We're so excited to have Krista here. She's the founder and CEO of Cubicles to Cocktails. That's where we found her on Instagram. She does a lot of these types of events and much more. She was inspired by a series of post-work happy hours with her friends and mentors, and she launched Cubicles to Cocktails back in 2018. She felt that happy hour was a space to share and gain advice from others, and that's kind of what we're doing here tonight. And how to navigate corporate life as a Black woman. She conducts research and by speaking to women of color in her network, and she's discovered that a lot of women face similar issues that they previously commiserated over happy hours. Krista believes that every woman deserves the network and resources. Hopefully this is a resource for you all to enable each of us to excel in your career while flourishing in your life. She's also an alumna of Rice University. She has a BS in bioengineering and an MS in bioscience research and health policy. And I believe you're out in Waco, correct, Krista?
In Houston.
Houston, why did I say Waco? Oh, Baylor, okay, Baylor.
Yeah.
You work at Baylor College of Medicine, which is not the Baylor that's in Waco, so I just messed that up. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Krista.
Awesome. Okay, let me share my screen. And just everybody just gives me like a thumbs up or just a head nod or something to let me know if you can see it. Okay, great. Let's get started. So thank you so much, Haley and Melanie, for the invitation to speak with your amazing group of ladies this evening, and gentlemen, if we have any on this call. So today I'm here to talk to you about women's empowerment and being an ally, particularly when it comes to being in the workspace. As Haley mentioned, my name is Christa Clark. I'm the founder of Cubicles to Cocktails. And Cubicles to Cocktails is a career development platform that provides women who are typically the only women at work or on their team with the reason to build their network, as well as to find resources that authentically speaks to their career challenges so that they can advance in their careers. I'm also a certified project management professional. I'm a womanist and a DEI advocate. A fun fact about me is that I once considered architecture as a career path before I decided on engineering. So this is kind of a full circle moment for me to have the opportunity to speak with this phenomenal group this evening. So from my talk today, I know I have about 10 minutes to go over this, but I really want you to take away 4 incredible lessons from this talk. So one is to know how to explain why women's career empowerment is important. This is kind of self-explanatory, but this ties into later on in our content as far as defining what a microaggression is, using skills to navigate and respond to microaggressions at work, as well as describing steps to be an ally and to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And so women's empowerment is necessary because statistics show that 1 out of every 5 women are actually the only women at work. When you consider women of color, this statistic becomes even more dire because women of color are typically the only woman and the only the only woman of color on their teams. And when you're the only at work, this could open up a wide array of just challenges in the workplace for you. And it actually amplifies some of the negative challenges that you may face in the workplace because of your hypervisibility and dealing with bias in the workplace. From a recent survey with the Women in Architecture survey, 60% of architects actually believe that the industry has not fully accepted the authority of women architects. And there's some amazing women architects, especially those who've had a lot of historical influence on this particular industry. And I linked to a resource at the end of this PowerPoint, and I will share that PowerPoint with you. And so just to bring it full circle really briefly, when we experience microaggressions in the workplace, we're actually 3 times more likely to regularly start to think about leaving our jobs than women who have not experienced this form of discrimination. And as I mentioned, when you are the only at work, whether or not you're a woman of color or a white woman, these microaggressions that you may experience, they actually increase in frequency and in intensity in those type of environments. And so in talking with Haley and Melanie, they mentioned that one of the topics that you all were really interested in was learning more about how to navigate environments when you're the only on a work site, a construction site, and you receive certain comments. Some may seem positive, but it really makes you feel more isolated. And so what you all have experienced is actually called a microaggression. And so a microaggression is a common occurrence in the workplace. It particularly happens to marginalized communities. So whether or not you're a woman, person of color, part of the LGBT community, or even somebody who has a disability, these are everyday forms of discrimination that you may hear that's rooted in some sort of bias. And this could be unintentional or intentional, but at the end of the day, it's a disempowering type of scenario to experience. Some examples of microaggressions include like having your competence questioned, like needing to provide more evidence about your competence, or if you walk into the room and you're mistaken for the administrator who's setting up the conference instead of leading the meeting that you're tanning, that's a form of microaggression. Sometimes it could be, wow, you sound so articulate, or wow, like this is incredible, you're a woman in this like environment. That's actually a microaggression because it's kind of like, it's unexpected. Like the bias is, we didn't expect for you to be here, even though you do deserve to be in that room. And this table is just briefly showing how women in the workplace just experiences from the Lean In and McKinsey Women in the Workplace Study 2019 with microaggressions. And what it's pointing out is for the particular groups of women, if you look at the LGBT community, disabilities, and Black women, their experiences with microaggression in the workplace are more frequent and more intense. So they're having a worse experience than some of the other cohorts of women. So now that we know what microaggressions are, how exactly do we navigate microaggressions? Talking about race, talking about gender at work, and confronting any type of issues that you may have with sexism, discrimination in the workplace can be tricky. However, with microaggressions, sometimes you may feel that you're overreacting, but chances are you aren't. So make sure you always trust your gut. And when you think about when you encounter a microaggression in the workplace, just consider the fact that you actually do have choices. You can let it go. If you let it go, though, you will be able to preserve your energy. But on the negative side of that, it starts to become a cumulative effect where it could be detrimental to your physical health. It could make you feel even more isolated in the workplace, and once again lead to different workplace stresses and even trauma in the workplace. So the other options are to speak up now or to speak up later. There's a process, a 4-step process called Discern, Disarm, Divide, and Decide. And so in this process, it's a really great process to consider if you're ever faced with a microaggression in the workplace. Discern is the first step, which is for you to consider how much investment are you willing to give to this particular scenario? Another question you could ask yourself is this relationship important to you? And that way you could really start to decide if it's best for you to save your energy and let it go, or if it's time for you to speak up. If you do decide to speak up, 2 strategies include disarm and divide. So disarm is really setting up the scene where you're allowing the perpetrator to know that this is a difficult conversation and I'm not like faulting you, but can you clarify what do you mean by that? You may not realize when you say that, wow, you sound so articulate, or wow, I can't believe that I can't believe that you did X, Y, Z, and you're a woman. When you say those things, it's hurtful because it invalidates my experience, or it makes me feel as if I don't belong here. It makes me feel as if you don't respect me as a professional, as somebody who is competent. And so that's disarming and defying, is really helping to create a situation where you're not creating the person to be defensive, but also helping them to think twice about what it is they said, because oftentimes when they start to say and clarify what do you mean by that, then they start to realize what type of bias was actually in that statement. And then lastly, decide how do you want to proceed from there, if you have the conversation or even if you let it go. So you need to decide to remind yourself that this microaggression is not a reflection of your worth. It's not a reflection of your skill. And so this is really a place for you to affirm yourself and to decide how you want to proceed moving forward. Now, the thing with microaggressions is that we cannot forget about intersectionality. Intersectionality is a concept in women's empowerment and feminism, where we look at the whole person. So for instance, I'm a woman of color and I cannot separate my identity of being Black and my identity of being woman. I'm both all the time. And so intersectionality looks at your socioeconomic status, maybe your religion, maybe your disabilities, your gender, your race, And because of intersectionality, we sometimes may find ourselves being the microaggressor. So if somebody comes to you from a marginalized community, to let you know that you were a microaggressor in their life, just a reminder, don't be defensive. Remember that your intent, even if it was a good intention, that intent does not supersede the impact of your words or your action. So simply try to trust and believe in that person's experience. If you're somebody also in the workplace who is witnessing somebody doing a microaggression towards one of your colleagues, if you go back to the Disarm, Divide, and Decide framework, this statement, what do you mean by that, is a great statement for you to speak up in the workplace to be an ally. So speaking of being an ally, some of the things that I wanted to talk about today, which are very helpful in helping you to be anti-racist and also to be a stronger ally in the workplace to any marginalized women in the workplace, be it women of color, be it women who are of the LGBT community or even disabled, is to first educate yourself. And by educating yourself, I mean, like, seriously stop for a moment and do it on your own. Sometimes we tend to rely on the groups that we're wanting to be allies towards to educate us, but that is actually very emotionally taxing for a lot of community members, and especially when it's the case that Google has a plethora of anti-racism resources available on the wide world web. But I wanted to point out two of my favorite resources that I recommend to people. Includes the newsletter Anti-Racism Daily, as well as Racial Cargo's The Great Unlearning Program. Those are two great resources that you could get information in a digestible method for not only anti-racism, but for also other intersectional topics. And then another thing to do is to actually take action. Oftentimes when we're trying to be an ally, we could find ourselves lost in the cycle of learning. Being an ally is a messy process, but it's also a beautiful process to undergo because you're constantly learning and you would constantly make mistakes, but it's just important to reflect and to figure out like why was something wrong when you intended for it to be good. And so you can only really, being an ally is all about taking action. Like if you're just learning, if you're just donating, that's not allyship. Allyship is really taking action. So I listed out some simple actions that you could consider taking in your own career. For instance, referrals out to Black, Indigenous, and people of color vendors in your network when you're on construction projects. Also crediting your inspiration if you were inspired by a certain architecture or even an artist or something in the real world. Speak up about where you received your inspiration so that you could shine light back on others' work. And lastly, just speaking up in support, especially when you see microaggressions happening in the workplace, using the tools that we discussed to speak up in support of your colleagues and your friends. There's also a LEAP framework that is really great for managers to use with their direct reports. So LEAP means listening and learning from your BIPOC colleagues and their experiences, engaging with them in a more racially diverse and more casual setting. Engagement is actually a very important aspect of being an ally because, sometimes you may hear phrases like, I have a insert like Black friend, or I have a lesbian friend. And that really starts to tokenize that relationship. And most of the time that happens because we do tend to live by who we look like. We tend to connect with who we look like or who has similar backgrounds to us if it's not a physical appearance that is bringing us together for similar reasons. And so it's really important just to diversify your network in general. And that's something that you could do by engaging with your BIPOC colleagues. A is asking your BIPOC employees about their work and their goals. And then P is by providing then what opportunities, suggestions, encouragement, and general support. And just as another reminder, intent does not pardon the impact of our actions, but by doing reflection on what your intent is, you could avoid certain pitfalls such as tokenism or even the saviorism that we sometimes have when you do actions. I wanted to also talk about how our companies prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And the reason why is because when we know the resources and the tools and strategies that we can offer, on the flip side, we could then start to advocate to our employers better steps and actions. So
Is it breaking up for anyone else? Oh no. Did we lose her?
Yeah,
Okay.
she was breaking up for me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe while she logs back on, we can switch to a first panel question, and then she can pick up where she left off if she would like to. Jackie, we'll go to you first. Oh, there she is.
You're back.
You're back. Do you want to pick up where you left
Hey
off?
everybody, I apologize about that. My internet connection dropped, and I was just wrapping up. So I realized I may have been a little bit over time. So I keep this really brief. So a big thing is just making sure that you compensate for diversity, equity, inclusion labor, because it is a valid industry. It requires training and expertise. It's a value add to a company. And for marginalized communities, it comes with additional emotional labor and trauma sometimes. So it's really important to compensate employee resource groups, your diversity leaders for the roles that they're contributing to an organization. Setting KPIs and goals are really important. Being transparent. Jackie will probably go into this about like salary audits and how you could use that as a method to be transparent and equitable across the workforce. And then lastly, leadership buy-in. And basically to sum it up, that performative actions such as donating and statements of support, it does not equal doing the work. The work really is set around creating goals and really providing opportunities, support for the entire talent pipeline for organizations. So I'm gonna wrap it up with my resources. We will share this slide, but these are some of my resources that I absolutely love for this topic that I wanted to share with you all, including some that are more specific to architecture. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll be able to answer questions at the end.
That's amazing. We'll pull those resources together and distribute them to everyone that attended tonight. So thank you, Krista. Before we head over to Jackie to talk a little bit more about pay equity and compensation, just to break it up a little, we're going to do one panel question, and then maybe Jackie, after your presentation, since we're running a little bit late, we'll just go right into Stephanie's. So I think one of the things that we try to focus on at WIA is mentorship. And I think one thing that I always reflect on is what my mentors have told me. So we wanted to hear from you if there's any salient piece of advice that you've carried from a mentor throughout your career, and if you'd like to just share briefly a little bit about that with us. Should we start with Krista? Do you want to go first?
Sure, I could go first. So a piece of advice that I received from my mentor is that you're the prize. This is something that she says to me often, because as women, we are so much hardworking, and we're also creative. There's many leadership skills that we have that actually makes us phenomenal leaders in the workplace, that's often undervalued. And so when you're facing a lot of situations, just remembering your worth not tying your worth to your career, but just remembering your worth as a human, as a phenomenal woman, and remembering the value that you bring to a company so that you could, once again, just affirm yourself in the workplace when you encounter anything discouraging, and you become a better advocate for yourself and for other women like you. So.
Amazing. What about you, Jackie?
So I really love what Krista said, and you know, the advice about knowing your worth. Mine has a lot to do with like the presentation that I'll talk about after this, but one of my mentors in HR, because I do HR, I do compensation, and she told me when I first started my career, when I accepted a job offer, she pretty much like slapped my hand. Well, not physically. She was just like, got after me and said, hey, like, why did you just accept without evaluating the offer? Why did you just go with whatever they gave you in the first round? And I really thought about that, and that really jump-started, you know, my passion for helping women of color ask for more money and evaluate job offers, because when I first started in my career, I just took whatever they gave me without even, you know, doing my research and talking with the recruiter more. I was just happy they gave me a job. And that's really not the way that you should do it. And so her words really stuck with me as I went on in my career. I've negotiated for more. I fought for higher performance ratings. I fought for promotions. And so her, you know, telling me that in the beginning, don't just take what they give you, always fight for more and fight for your worth, has stuck with me, and I just want to share that with everyone. So hopefully this story sticks with you in the future.
Perfect. I've always heard that too, to always ask for more. What about you, Stephanie?
Okay, so as a clarity and confidence coach, my biggest aha was when my mentor was talk to me about just being authentic, being your authentic self. And I think that that comes from really knowing who you are first, what your core values are. And when you know what those are, then, you know, like the rest of your life kind of falls in line with those. You know what to say no to, you know what to say yes to, and that your yes is your best yes, and your no is a absolutely nah. So I think that that's the biggest advice I have.
Perfect. I need to say no more often, so I totally agree with that. Okay, so we're going to head into Jackie's presentation. A little bit more about Jackie. I was actually introduced to Jackie through Krista's Instagram, and I think initially through Inclusion Unpacked on Instagram. Jackie's an executive compensation analyst at Hewlett-Packard. She's a corporate HR professional, and she has extensive experience in strategic compensation, data analysis. She's a proponent of pay equity, which is why we invited her here tonight, negotiating for higher pay and helping women know their worth. In 2019, she started Elevate Your Pay to help BIPOC women get paid what they deserve. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh, here we go. I just unmuted myself. So thank you all for inviting me to speak. This is a topic that I'm super passionate about. Like they mentioned in my background, I'm a compensation professional. I specifically do executive compensation now at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise in the tech industry. But the majority of my compensation background has been doing broad-based. So that is doing compensation for the non-executive pool. And so I talk money, look at money all day. And so compensation and talking about pay equity is such a passion of mine that I started an Instagram page, a social media platform called Elevate Your Pay to help women of color, because I wanted, you know, people who look like me, who I could, you know, who are my friends and people that I knew, and all women of color to, you know, get the pay increases that I've been able to get throughout my career, and to, you know, understand that they can ask for more, and to know the facts that there is a huge lag and a huge gap between men and women and in their pay in the workforce. And so that's just a little bit about me, and I'll make this presentation fairly quick. And so at first I want to show y'all what are the facts. And so what is the gender pay gap? And it's the gap between the amount of money paid to women and men who often do the same work. And so I know a lot of y'all may, be familiar with Equal Pay Day and why are there so many equal pay days? We just had the All Women Equal Pay Day on March 24th. And then we had the Asian Pacific Equal Pay Day on March 9th. But there is a, gender pay gap through different populations of individuals. And so this, I put a graphic up there, like how much women get paid, let's say Latin women, Native women, Black women, all women, Asian women, compared to white non-Hispanic men. And these are actual numbers that come from the census. You can look it up, because I get a lot of people, they're like, that's not true, that's fake news. And it's like, really, no, this is actual data that gets shared in the census, and you can look this up on equalpayday.org or the National Women's Law Center, and they do a lot more overviews on, and they do a lot more analysis on that data, but it's real information. This is what's really happening to women across the US who work full-time and year-round, and they're getting paid 80 cents to $1 of white Hispanic male. And I do want to point out that not only is this prevalent in the professional, and for professionals, but we also see that a lot in our, the individuals that are in the front lines who are working non-exempt positions. So they're working hourly jobs, and they're seeing we see a bigger gap within that population. And I'll say that with the COVID, it has, the pay gap has significantly increase, and there's still a lot of studies happening on the 2020 data, which hopefully I'll be able to share later on throughout the year as those studies wrap up. But the data has shown that women are experiencing an even more significant pay gap due to COVID, because in a lot of households, women are taking the burden of taking care of the children, or had to, stop working to homeschool their kids, or there was a lot of things going on. They lost their jobs, and so there's been a significant gap for women, and that has increased due to COVID. And I'll share a link to that study in a little bit. And so also understanding the facts, like what contributes to the pay gap. Obviously, gender and race discrimination is a huge factor. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, the different disparities between Latin women, Native, Black women, and Asian women. And I do want to point out, even though Asian women, let me go back to that slide, are 85 cents to $1, it's very the gap is significant the more you break down that population. So I think I'll share another link to that, but just because they're at 85 cents doesn't mean all of them are at 85 cents. And so another thing that contributes to the pay gap is occupational segregation. Sometimes you won't see a lot of women in engineering roles or in those high technical jobs, so that contributes to that as well. And lack of pay transparency within organizations. And so I'll talk more about this later on, but in some companies, they do not share pay practices. They don't keep up with their competitive structures, and they hide that from their employees. And that continues to create a pay gap within the different marginalized groups, especially women of color and women in general. And so that also contributes to the pay gap. And then, like I mentioned, women are expected to be caregivers. And so, sometimes, not all women, but women will stop working for a number of years because they'll take care of the children, and then they'll lose out wages for those 3 to 5 years. And then once they go back to work, sometimes they go into that salary that they were 3 years ago. But if I will just let you know, as a compensation professional, the salary structures move every year, and your organization should be participating in salary surveys and refreshing those salary structures every year, because they move, I want to say 3 to 5% depending on the job. And if you're in a hot commodity job, they sometimes move up to 10%. And so if you're already starting off low, or you leave a job at a low rate and you still come in at that rate, you are vastly behind in the market, and you're not even close to being at a competitive rate. And so next, so what is the impact? What does the pay gap what does the pay gap take away from women and women of color? And so I just wanted to show y'all on, the more money we lose out on long term, it takes away from putting down a, down payment for a home, funding a business, a side hustle, paying for childcare. And this is especially important for those individuals who, work an hourly job. Sometimes childcare is super expensive, and women will not go into a job because the cost of childcare is not even worth it. And then also getting a higher education, and then groceries. That money could be going to groceries, can be going into your family, feeding your children, feeding your elderly, your seniors, and your family. And then it's taking away money from your retirement fund. So think about it. If you currently work at an organization, the amount that goes into your 401k is based on your current salary. If you're at a low rate or uncompetitive rate, you're pretty much losing out on the money of what could have been a competitive rate, and that is, taking away from what's going into your 401k on a monthly basis. So it's not only hurting your, short-term pay, your current pay, but it's also hurting your pay in the long run. And so what can we do to close the gender pay gap? And so I want to be 100 with y'all. It's not on your shoulders 100% to fix the pay gap. And, it has to do with laws, it has to do with the organizations you work for, and then you can do something as well, but it's not just on your shoulders to change your pay and to change the way your company pays you. So I just want to point that out. But, here are a couple things and strategy and tips that I will give you to hopefully increase your pay long term. And so acknowledge your own implicit biases. And this is specifically for our allies and those who are in leadership positions. Look at your employees, make sure they're being paid competitively. If they're not, why haven't you spoken up? If you feel that that individual deserves fair pay, or if they're doing the work, why aren't you paying them competitively? So look at your organization, and if you become a leader in the future, always ensure that you're doing right by your employees. And so the next one is support women in their careers. Krista, touched on this a little bit about, providing that support for the BIPOC individuals, but, I believe so heavily in that. And I had some big supporters early in my career that supported me and fought for me when it came to promotions or getting a higher performance rating, because at the end of the day, sometimes companies base that performance rating on how much you're going to get paid for the next year. And so you need to have some really good supporters, and those who are in, going into leadership positions or in leadership positions, I highly encourage you to mentor and support and advocate for women in the workforce and ensure that they're being paid competitively. And this goes into the next one, pay women competitively, period. And so make sure that, the salary structures are in place, that they're competitive, that, organizations are doing pay transparency analysis. Pay transparency and pay equity, I will tell you, in the comp world is a super popular topic right now. If your organization is not looking at pay equity and not doing pay equity analysis and pay transparency, then that's something wrong with that organization. I would like encourage you to look somewhere else, because they're not keeping their employees in you know, in their, you know, mind and wanting to make sure they're paying their employees competitively. But good organizations will be doing that every year, and healthy organizations do that. And those who care and want to maintain their employees will be doing that. And so, like I said, transparency, be transparent, ask your organization to be more transparent with their pay practices. That's been a big ask this past year, and a lot of organizations are getting trained on how to be more transparent. And I'll tell you that there are a couple organizations that I know about that are already starting to revamp their total reward strategy or their pay strategies to be more transparent. So it's not that companies aren't doing it, it's that there are companies that don't want to do it. And so if your company is not doing that, I encourage you to submit a request to HR or submit something anonymously, or go through your ERGs and ask them to ask your diversity councils or the higher ups that this is something that is important to you all and that would be good for the company long term. And so the next would be advocate, support and advocate to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and the Pregnant Workers Act. And so actually the Paycheck Fairness Act, I think, was passed by the House recently, a couple of weeks ago. And I know the president and vice president were talking a lot about it on social media and how it's so important. And it goes back to how a lot of women have been hit so hard, especially after COVID and during COVID, and you know, their earnings have taken a significant downturn, and you know, people and the pay gap is increasing, and it's getting even wider, especially like I said earlier, that women are having to take on caregiver roles, or you know, there's been a lot of layoffs happening, or companies are doing a lot of, they did some pay decreases or they stopped pay. But this act helps protect workers from, you know, not getting retaliation from asking for more pay or asking about pay practices and other things. And I'll share some more information about those acts. And then lastly, and I put this very intentional, how negotiating should be the last thing, because like I said, it shouldn't only be on your shoulders and only for you to, you know, get more, for you to get higher pay. It's a lot of factors, and that's why it's all about, that's why I try to do a lot of advocacy and education, because it's not only on you to get that higher pay, but it can help to negotiate. And so I heard there's a lot of students on this call, and I highly encourage you, when you're getting that first offer, make sure they're bringing you in competitively, because sometimes the pay that you come in will follow you for the rest of your, you know, career at that company. Because at the end of the day, some companies only do 3 to 5% increases every year for their employees, and sometimes it's even lower. So if you come in low, you're going to stay low as long as you stay there, if you're not getting any promotions or anything. So make sure that you're coming in competitively. Talk to mentors or people that you know in your industry that are at that job that, you know, you want to go into. Ask them, what did they start off as, or you know, what do you think this job pays at? And so it's so important to network and find, you know, someone that you can talk to in your industry. And that's what I really like about this event, that there's also professionals and there's students. So I would highly encourage the students to reach out to the professionals in this organization and talk one-on-one on them, and maybe ask them to help you if you get an offer in the future, like, hey, do you think this is competitive? It's all about, you know, putting yourself out there and making those connections and ensuring that, you know, as long as we start talking about compensation, the more I I think there's more awareness of it, that we can fix the issues that are happening right now with the pay gap. And so, as well as negotiating, like I said, don't always take the first offer they give you. Recruiters, let me tell you, they already know that, they already can anticipate you going back and saying like, hey, I'd like at least 5% more or whatever. They already know you're going to come back with something. And a lot of recruiters have told me that sometimes they're surprised when someone doesn't go back and negotiate for more money. And so don't be scared, you know, do your research. There's a lot of resource out there. I specifically love to use PayScale. I used to use them to market price jobs back at my old company. And so a lot of their data is very, I would say, legit data. And so PayScale is really great. There's LinkedIn Salary Insights. And so make sure that you're doing your research, because if you're asking for like 120,000 for like an entry level, that doesn't make sense. Make sure it's the right years of experience when you're looking, or it's the right geographic location, because that makes a big difference, because a job in Houston will not be the same as a job in California. So make sure you're looking at the right location and the right level of experience and education. And so do your research, advocate for yourself, and find someone that can help you give advice on what the right salary should be. And for our professionals who are already in the job, make sure every year that you are logging all the things that you've done in your organization, what's the impact you're making. I personally have a cheat sheet where I type in everything that I've done or projects that I'm working on. I save all the emails that I get where people are telling me, hey, it was great working with you on this project, or hey, thanks for being an awesome coworker during those appreciation day. I save all that. I even send them to my boss sometimes. I'm like, hey, thought you should know that you have an amazing employee. And he laughs at that, because I'm like super blunt and tell him like give me feedback, or here's what I did great. And I make sure to tell him. But like I said, save those things and log everything that you're doing and what's the impact. Did you bring in money to your organization? What project did you work on? Because it'll be so much easier to have promotion conversations, salary increase conversations with your leader, and really justify why you deserve that increase if you feel like you're not getting what you should be getting. And so always have the receipts with you, and that would be it would make the conversation so much easier. So I can talk so much and on about compensation and pay equity, but I don't want to make this presentation super long. But definitely connect with me on Elevate Your Pay on Instagram. You can email me at elevateyourpay@gmail.com, and you can also find me on LinkedIn, Jackie Lynn Garcia. I would love to connect with y'all and talk more about pay equity and the gender pay gap. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. That was so great. It's great advice that you kind of tied in on the end. I just want to say that's super important, whether your organization actually, has kind of a goal setting or kind of review process that marches its way throughout the year, that you have to kind of fill out about yourself as you go. But just keep in mind that leadership is, they're pulled in a lot of directions. And while they see your value, and of course they know, whether you're great for the team or not in their own eyes, it's always really helpful to bring some bullet points, try to narrow it down to your biggest achievement for the year. In my past experience, I've done that, and it's, we sit down and talk about it earlier in the year, and then I say, okay, this is what I've checked off the list this year, and this is, if you can find some descriptions of jobs, like whatever your next tier is, whatever you're working on, whatever you're working towards, even if you're kind of shifting across to different job roles, just kind of use that language and kind of tie that in. I could say that it gives them a great reason, and they can bring that to their superiors or whoever, HR, and say, okay, they've checked the boxes here and they're great at all this other stuff too. So that's really important. And start it at the beginning of your career if you can for the students that are on the call.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, Haley. I recently had a conversation with someone that I worked with in my past company, and she was like, I really think I'm going to ask for a promotion. And I told her that advice. I was like, make sure you have all the reasons why and what you worked on, the type of work that you're doing. And if they tell you like, oh, you're not doing what a senior role is. And I'm like, well, ask them like, well, what does a senior do? And how are the things that I'm doing differ from what a senior role entails? Give me that feedback.
And ask for that like ahead of time too.
Yeah, for sure.
If you can. In the interest of time, I'd love to introduce Stephanie. Thank you so much, Jackie. That was such great information. I can't wait to dig further into your Instagram and everything. I'm definitely going to be following you. It's going to be great. So Stephanie Hicks, we're so lucky to have you on the call. Stephanie is part of Stephanie Hicks and Company. She is a certified life coach and style coach. She also uses the term clarity and personal stylist. Feel free to connect me, Stephanie. You're based in Simi Valley in Southern California. I see that you have a really great podcast, and I'm super excited to listen to that, called The New True. And you're a clarity and confidence coach as your primary role. And really, you're focused on evolving the conversation about your confidence in terms of your wardrobe, and really figuring out who you are and what your true personal style is in order to kind of redefine the narrative about who you are. And this kind of goes right back to that position when you're asking for, you know, a raise, or if you're just, you know, interested in putting yourself out there more. It's just such a great thing to have you on the call. So without any more, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Hicks.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Like Haley said, I am a clarity and confidence coach. I help busy women rewrite their fashion rules, basically. You know, we are in a world where the fashion is fed to you, and this is how you should be, this is how you should look, instead of really figuring out who you are and going with that. I am a rebel. I typically just go against the grain just to go against the grain. So I like to do things my own way. And so I like to help women to realize that you don't have to do things the same way that everybody else does. And so when I'm talking about, I don't have a PowerPoint because I'm a rebel. But when you're talking about reframing how your wardrobe serves you, I just want to start with like how the research is. The research shows that 90% of our communication as humans is nonverbal, right? The first thing when you meet someone, you check them out, right? You check them out, you look them up and down, you put them in the boxes. And that is just the way that the human brain works. That's the way that we have been trained to work. Yes, no, tall, dark, black, white, whatever the case may be, we're looking at those type of details. And humans are visual. And so no matter, even if you don't want to be that type of person, we just are. Own it, take that, own that. You know, like we put things into boxes because it makes it simple for us to decide what we want to deal with and what we don't want to deal with. So the question becomes, how do you become more aware and learn to rewire the boxes and the labels, right? And that is, you start with you. You start with yourself. And up until this point, you've let the beauty industry pretty much define what is trendy and what your personal style is. And I mean, it just is. The beauty industry says that we're wearing mom jeans, and I don't know whose idea it was to bring those back, but they're back. You know, and so, and what's the new thing now? Skinny jeans are out and middle parts are out. Like who makes these rules? And so my goal as a stylist and a confidence coach is to encourage you to not just jump on every style or trendy bandwagon, and to really understand who you are. Because for the most part, a lot of trends don't work with people's lives or lifestyles, right? So mainstream looks, or let's see, when you are confident, when you're confident about who you are, the way that you want to present yourself, the mainstream looks don't really mean anything to you. And you can take and pick and choose whatever it is that you want. And for people who think that you just have one style, you don't. I don't know one person that is just like, I'm all classic, like it's, people have a mix and a blend, because that is what makes style, right? Your own personal style. I can totally wear like the same colors or the same outfit as Krista, but I might have different jewelry, or I might zhuzh it up in a different way than she does, because she might look more classic and I might do more casual, but it's the same outfit, it's just different looks. So the first step in making your wardrobe serve you is you don't need permission to dress differently. That's the first step. You don't need permission. You are your own permission. And once you realize this, then my job as a coach is to come in and teach you the different ways, teach you and coach you on all the possibilities for your wardrobe, all the possibilities for your style, depending on what you do, what you decide. I don't like to, with my clients, the first thing that I tell them to do is make a Pinterest board. I don't like to say, we're going to define your style, because style evolves as you evolve. I mean, if you look at high school pictures of yourself, what were you wearing then? I hope you're not wearing the same thing. Because I'm not wearing the same thing. I have pictures. I didn't want to show those. But this brings individual style to, and that brings confidence, because everything in your wardrobe is curated, especially for you, for your body, for your lifestyle. And it's fun. It doesn't have to be boring. Some people are into capsule wardrobes and minimalism. That's not me. But I have clients that are, and that's okay. You can still have something that's functional, even if you have a small amount of clothing. And I have to add lifestyle into my description, because I mean, really, tutus are cute, right? But if you have a toddler and you're running around after a toddler, you're not trying to wear a tutu and 4-inch heels. I'm just saying it's impractical. So the way that I help women is to make sure that your wardrobe is also practical, functional, but that you're stylish and that you are presenting yourself in the way that you want people to see you. And it doesn't have to be like uncomfortable. You can have all those things. You do just have to take the time up front in order to do that. So that's pretty much it. I would like questions. I function better on people asking questions. So just leave it there.
I have a question. I feel like the most common dress code that I hear from wherever I'm working or going into is business casual, except for Fridays, because most companies here have half day Fridays and you can wear jeans on Fridays. But how would you define business casual for women?
I think that business casual gets a bad rep. I think that when people wear business casual, they really just wear business. And I don't know if companies really know the definition of business casual. So, but it is like, you should be able to wear a t-shirt that is casual, a loose fitting button down shirt, not, so basically in the corporate world, a business casual would be non-tailored, I believe. So things that are not tailored. So not a business, a suit jacket or but you would still probably need to wear a nice blouse or a button-down shirt, but just like a looser fit.
I think one of the things, and everyone can start to chime in, that it, from my perspective, happens a lot as a woman. Sometimes you're in our industry, you're the only woman in a room. And for me, I mean, I'm wearing bright colors right now a little bit, but like, you know, our industry, we've been known to wear a lot of black and grays and these muted colors. And it's sometimes you feel it, there's a lot going on to try to stand out in the room, right, with what you're comfortable with and what the world is kind of comfortable with in that scenario. If you have any tips for kind of, I don't know, kind of going for it, but also like really, you know, you have to really be confident with that, because sometimes it feels like you're dressing too like womanly, too feminine, you know, and maybe you don't want to be seen as that, although you love to wear certain colors, you love to wear patterns, or, you know, I think that's kind of a topic for discussion that we could probably have at a happy hour for sure, on how, you know, some people just own it, but other people, it's, you know, you don't want to be perceived a certain way in front of, you know, that kind of scenario. So that's kind of my bit on that.
Yeah, this is why one of the first things that I do with my clients is work with them, not what they wear. We do mindset work first, because really a lot of the stories that we tell ourselves, like you shouldn't stand out, you shouldn't, can't wear color, you know, like all those things are things that have been fed to us. Like, this is the role that you are supposed to play. And if, again, rebel, that's just me speaking. I make my own role, you know, but I had to do a lot of mind work around that, a mindset work around that, to let go of the things that don't belong to me and to own the things that do. Now, in those, you might find that you do have, you know, like, I do want people to see me in this way, right? And so then if that's the case and that is yours, then you have to figure out how you want to blend that ideal with color, right? Or blend that ideal with standing out a little bit more. But I think that especially for all the women here, if you're a woman and you're in your own, you're probably, I don't know if you're the only woman there, but you know, like, it's not a lot of you already stand out. So I'm just like, I'm like, you can't blend in, right? So just kind of like own that I'm gonna stand out no matter what, because either because I'm a woman or because I'm Black, whatever the case may be. So I might as well just stand in who I am. That's just the beginning of, you know, mindset work or whatever. But I think it's really trying to deciding what is yours, what ideas are yours, and what has been fed to you, and which ones are you willing to let go of, and which ones are you willing to, you know, like continue to hold on to because they are, you like, you hold them dear.
That's a great point. I think we have some other questions too for everyone, and Melanie can start to ask those questions. She's gonna present them, and we have them for all three of you. So
yeah, I think I'm actually gonna pivot a little, and Bhavana had a great question that I think could probably, I'd love to hear all of your viewpoints on it. Re-entry into the workplace. So that could be after raising kids, or after COVID, after being laid off, whatever it is. What are your tips? I mean, I know, Jackie, yours, the salary was, I think, the spur of the question, but I think, what are your tips for someone that's coming back into a workplace? And maybe we'll start with you, Jackie, and then Krista and Stephanie.
So, I mean, I sound like a broken record, but I am a big proponent of researching. I mean, I look at data all day long. I analyze things. I research everything. And it's all about, when you're coming back into the workplace, it's all about looking at where's the market right now for that specific role or that, you know, job, family, or job category, where is it at in the market? And like I said, pay scale's really great. Salary, LinkedIn Salary Insights, I know they shared in the chat earlier the AI salary calculator. I would definitely look at that. And then ask peers within your organization, or not organization, but peers that you meet, like at events like this, or the organizations that you're in, AAI, like, you know, is this salary competitive? And once, the more you know, the more confident and the more, you know, the less stress you have on asking for that specific number. And so that's would be my advice is, you know, you're coming into, you know, the workforce again after being gone for so long. Don't come in blindsided, and don't come in without knowing anything. It's all about doing that research and asking and putting yourself out there. So hope that helps.
We also got another question related to this. So someone asked, when your employer gives annual raises, like cost of living, right? So we have like 1.5% to 3% per year based on, you know, kind of the rise of inflation and how things work. How do you fight for more when they don't really give raises? Or like, I think we kind of touched on this earlier, but, you know, I think maybe anyone can chime in on what their thoughts are with that.
Yeah, I love to take that one. So it's really important in the workplace to show and demonstrate your impact. So one of the misconceptions a lot of early on young professionals have when it comes to promotions at work is that doing your job effectively is enough to receive a promotion. And that's a big fallacy. Doing your job is what you're being paid to do already. And so one of the things that I advocate for women to do is to keep a weekly impact report. And so what that means is like summarizing just some of your biggest action items, people you spoke with, as Jackie mentioned, keeping track of kudos that you receive from your team members, from higher ups, executives especially, and then just prepare, so do that and keep track of your impact, and then look at how those projects tie back to the strategic goals of your institution, to the financial bottom line, or the bottom line for a particular initiative that may not drive revenue, but is driving efficiencies or closing some type of performance KPI that your company has in place. So when you do go above and beyond, and you can really effectively demonstrate, maybe the goal was to drive $2 million in revenue, or to complete a design under $500,000, and you were able to do to meet that financial goal twice more. That's like how you demonstrate the value that I bring to this company, because I was able to go above and beyond to close or hit this goal. This is and the kudos that people give to me, this is the proof and the evidence of why I deserve 10%, not the 2 to 3.
I agree 100% with Krista. I mean, I have these conversations all the time with my own leader, just because I work in compensation, I talk about pay equity, I had to work really hard too for, to have fair pay and competitive pay. And one of the things that I do is I always have an open conversation with my leader about my career goals or things I want to do to level me up in my career. And I recently had a conversation with him 2 weeks ago, very honest, very candid, but this is the only reason I feel that I can be like that with him is because I established this relationship with him when I first started. I said, hey, I want to be honest with each other. I want us to have open communication. And we established those boundaries and that precedence in the beginning. And so, 2 weeks ago, I told him, hey, I really care about money, and I can't make more money in this job if I keep doing the same thing. I really need you to give me more responsibility or give me some more projects to be put on, because I want to make more money in the future. And I don't want to just get a 3% raise next year. Like, I need to bring more impact and more value to the team because I want more money in the future. Not that I'm saying you should ask your leader like that, but that's just the way I did it, because we keep it 100 with each other all the time. And so he was like, all right, so I'm gonna look for some more things and see what we can do. And let me tell you, I got put on 2 projects since that conversation that we had 2 weeks ago, because I told him, hey, I feel like I'm not bringing enough value to the team, and that's impacting my future earnings. And money means a lot to me. And so he took that and he was like, all right, we'll put you on some other projects. Because at the end of the year, or quarterly, weekly, I want to make sure that my impact sheet or my accomplishments or everything, that I am bringing enough evidence or receipts, like I said, to the table to tell my boss, like, hey, I did X, Y, and Z. This is why you should give me a raise. And so, yes, companies are doing 3% increases or whatever, but you need to ask yourself, are you doing anything different in your job? If you're still doing the same job that you did last year, like, it's pretty justified why you're getting that 3% increase. Like I mentioned earlier, the market moves every year. And so that's why your company is giving those 3% increases to stay up with the market. And so if you're doing the same thing, then I mean, that's justified why you're still making getting that 3% increase. But if you're doing more, make sure to come in and say, hey, I'm doing XYZ. I'm not doing the same job I was doing last year. My responsibilities have increased. This is my value that I'm bringing into the organization, to the team. This is the impact I've made in the past year. And this is why you should be giving me a raise or a promotion. But if you're doing the same thing, then it's justified why there's a 3%. But going back, if your job is not in a competitive range, then that's another conversation to be had with your leader or HR. So just wanted to give my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Jackie. I think that's super valuable information and great takeaway for everyone. And some people are chatting too about what they've done that's helped them with those exact things. And I think we have time for probably one more question, and hopefully, others reach out to you guys on Instagram or however, through the podcast. In the future, I definitely will. I found what you guys shared today so valuable. So thank you so much for being here with us. I think someone in the chat, they were kind of commenting on a couple things on looking professional, because most of us are professionals, or even students looking to get jobs. And what is kind of the pulse on, we are a creative industry, but what is the pulse on, kind of having, tattoos versus not, and, different colors in your hair, is there a topic of discussion that you see a lot, Stephanie, on self-expression for that?
I do. And I think that, again, it goes back to knowing yourself. So if that is your type of self-expression and you go to a company that does not allow you the freedom to do that, then I think that that's a choice that you made, right? So I think it's really knowing yourself, and is that a big, important, value for you, that you want to be able to color your hair or you want to be able to have tattoos, then you need to make sure that just as much as you're going in for the interviews, that you are interviewing the company as well. It's not just about, is it the money? It's about, is it going to be a good fit for you? Is it going to be, beneficial for you, for your lifestyle as well? But I think that if you do decide you want to go into a more professional atmosphere and you don't quite know about the companies, so for instance, you're lined up for an interview or whatever, you should definitely hide tattoos and kind of make sure that your hair is presentable until you get into that interview and ask questions about you know, like the company's environment. But hopefully you've done your research beforehand, before you go into an interview. Students, do the research on the company before you go into the interview, so that you know kind of like what they're about. And even just like from their website, you can kind of get an idea of what the office environment of that company is as well. So.
Yeah, I think after that initial interview too, you can kind of get a pulse on what business casual means to them. I know, you know, we have a lot of different, you know, in our industry, it goes from anywhere from, you know, interior designers to architects to construction. I mean, there's a lot more, but, you know, there's totally different forms of expression in clothing, and what's kind of like felt in those groups. So I think it's interesting when you get us all together, because it's kind of fun to see the mix. But
although I would say that it's a little bit difficult with the pandemic and having less people in the office, because it's tough to see what everyone's wearing and there's no one in there. And I know at the office I just started at, I'm the only woman that's currently coming into the office full time. So I'm literally like, I can't look at anyone else's style, because this is it. This is what you get. So I guess we're gonna wrap up with one more question, and then we'll let everyone go. And we'll definitely share all these resources that we shared tonight. We'll share them on our Instagram. We'll probably do a highlight on our story for all of these. We keep talking about empowerment, and that's something that I think means something different for everyone. I think what we'd like to hear is, what does empowerment mean to each of you, and how can we do that for others on a daily basis in kind of a succinct statement from you all? And maybe we'll start with Krista.
So empowerment to me means, like, this is going to be so cliche, but really like just reaching out to your sisters, like, so like to the women to the left, right, above, beneath you, and working with them to like collaborate and to rise together. I strongly believe that as women, we have everything that we need to link together and to provide the advice and the support to one another. That's how Jackie and I got connected, was by Money Talks, and you know, talking about financial empowerment and being able to just share our lessons learned, our wins amongst our network. So that's what it means to me.
What about you, Jackie?
So I'll say that, you know, empowerment means being more authentic with yourself and how you are, being more authentic at work. You know, being more open to having tough conversations with your coworkers, the people around you, with your friends. A lot of the times, you know, talking about pay and money is so taboo, especially in communities of color, that, you know, we just kind of ignore it. And so it's all about, you know, empowering those around you and giving them a safe space to talk about things that are may be hard for them to talk about. And then also I would say, you know, once, and I try to live by this myself, is, you know, once you get the knowledge for things and you get more experience, like never forget where you came from, and always strive to help others. And that's what I like to do, and that's what I strive to do in my career, is that yes, you know, I'm a compensation analyst. I know all this information, so let me share it and let me empower other women to go after that pay, to elevate their pay, and to go for those career dreams. So, you know, support women, support each other, support those around you and your loved ones, and never forget where you came from.
That's perfect. What about you, Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's about authenticity, really being yourself, and allowing people to be themselves as well. I think that that's where empowerment is, that understanding that not everyone's walk in life is your walk, and everyone is on their own journey, and allowing them the freedom to walk that journey without you interrupting. Without you interrupting or being disrespectful, and just really respecting that, and understanding that not everyone is in the same place, and that there's room for everyone. And so I think that empowers people when you are authentic, it empowers other people to be authentic as well. Like, oh, I can be myself. They're being themselves, I can be myself. And so when people are themselves, that's when authenticity is. And then you really find your true people, your tribe.
That's perfect. I think I always think about something my mentor said to me. She's always said, lead with grace with whatever you're doing. Consider that the person that you're talking to may have had a bad day, may have different experiences, and giving people the space to be different, and to, if they don't give you the answer that you really wanted, to accept that and maybe see where it's coming from. What about you, Haley, before we wrap up?
I sort of said this on my profile for WIA before, but there's so many ways that you can empower yourself that we sort of just began to touch on today. But it sounds a little brash, but a really kind of joking statement that one of my mentors gave me along the years here is sort of fake it till you make it. So like project that confidence, grow into it, you know, kind of learn about yourself. And even if you want that next position, like don't really fake it, but like do your research, but like grow into it and just do it. Like just, and I always, like, even before like you know, something really stressful, like a big presentation to a lot of people or something, just say, like, you know, you got this, like just keep doing it until you've got it, you know? And I think that's a way you can really empower yourself.
Okay. So thanks everyone for joining. I think we had over 35 participants this evening, and we're going to send out all the resources that were shared today. And like I said, we'll share it all to our Instagram as well, and definitely connect with everyone. Stephanie Hicks, is it Stephanie Hicks Co. or just Stephanie Hicks?
Stephanie Hicks Co.
Stephanie Hicks Co.
All social network.
And then Elevate Your Pay, and then Cubicles to Cocktails, and please connect with everyone. I think they put it all in the chat as well, but we'll follow up with all this to you all. And thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Yay.
Thank you.
Everyone, good night.
Thank you.
Good night.